recording now. So we have Shane Southwick from the Alaska State Library with us today to talk about the OWL project and how that fits in with CILC and what exactly all that means for everybody. I hope that all of you can hear me clearly. I'm going to mic off here in a second and turn it over to Shane. If you're having trouble hearing me at this point, please indicate that, or how about indicate that you can hear me by checking, either raising your hand like this or doing a check mark and responding yes. Either one of those will work. So at least you can hear. Diane, that's good. Amy, Natalie, can you hear? Don't hear anything from Amy. No, there's Natalie, okay. And Amy, I know she heard earlier. Okay, so at this point, I will turn this over to Shane and we'll get going. Shane, it's all yours.
All right, thanks, Scott. I am going to, it's always nice sometimes to put a face with a name, so I am going to share my video camera with you for a minute so you can see that I am real, that I have two hands, and you can put a face with what's going on today. So, like Scott told you, I am with the State Library and I'm with the Alaska OWL program. And some of you may be familiar with our program, some of you may not. But it was about 4 years ago, and we started the OWL program with the idea of doing a number of things in public libraries around the state. The first thing, our main objective, was that we wanted to increase broadband speeds in our libraries. They were lagging way behind. In fact, up until we came along, several libraries around the state were still using dial-up internet services for their library. So that was our main goal, was to get library speeds up to higher speed internet services, and at the time it was considered broadband services. And another goal was we wanted to provide libraries with resources to use this improved broadband. So things like desktop computers, we gave laptop computers, we gave iPads, we gave video conferencing endpoints to these libraries. So a number of tools that would enhance the computing capability in the library and allow them to take advantage of the new broadband that we were installing into these libraries. A third thing we wanted to do, which was probably our biggest hurdle, it was to install a statewide video conferencing network. So we, with the broadband, we were able to put video conferencing endpoints in 97 libraries around the state that allowed libraries to connect with each other, allowed them to connect to other video conferencing outside the state, and it's really been a fantastic tool over the past 3 years in allowing some of these things and some of these opportunities to happen that could never happen before. It was absolutely a challenge putting that together and getting all the logistics worked out with it, and continues to be a challenge today, as a matter of fact, with some of these locations. But for the most part, it works, it functions properly, and we've had lots and lots and lots of good experiences and good feedback and lots of use on this video conferencing network. And then the final piece of our project when we started was we thought it was important that we train people in these locations on how to basic troubleshoot some of the issues that come up with computers and like the video conferencing and so on and so forth with that. If we gave them the tools, we wanted them to know how to use that and how to solve some of the basic problems. So we did a lot of training in our libraries around the state in allowing them to gain these tools to help when we need it. And that has worked out fine. The issue that we found is we've there's a lot of turnover in some of the more rural locations as far as, because a lot of them are volunteer libraries and that sort of thing. So we've had to retrain some, and in some locations the turnover has been so frequently that now there's probably not a trained person in there, which comes back to us a little bit. So the gist of it is, our program has been very successful in accomplishing what we wanted to accomplish, and allowing libraries to really connect with other opportunities outside. My biggest fear when we went into this, when I came on board, was, okay, we build this video conferencing network, and it's expensive to do, it's expensive to put the infrastructure in, we spend a lot of money and time on training people on how to use it. So who's going to use it? I mean, how are we going to get content on this network to where we get the use that we need to justify the cost, and so on and so forth. So as we were throwing around ideas for that on how we're going to do that and take advantage of this network, CILC, which stands for the Center for Interactive Learning Collaboration, we discovered them. We were introduced to them, and thought, that's a perfect way to get people comfortable with video conferencing, for them to understand what video conferencing is, for them to understand and get familiar with the equipment that they have and know how to use it. That was one of the biggest hurdles. Was it can be from the 10,000-foot level somewhat intimidating when a new piece of equipment comes into your library or your museum or whatever the case may be, and people get scared of that. They don't want to deal with it. They don't, and so once we put that in there, and we contracted and partnered with CILC, we were able to sort of ease those concerns as far as the intimidation and being scared of this new big fancy piece of equipment in our library. Once we were able to show how easy it is to use and how simple it is to do, it really took off. And that was probably, partnering with CILC is one of the best decisions we made throughout early in our program, because it did exactly what we needed it to do. So what I'm going to do now is actually, I'm going to do a web tour and bring up the CILC website. And the URL for it is cilc.org. Can everybody see that? Please just give me a check marker, raise your hand, and let me know that you see the website. Okay, good. And if you have any questions about this as we go through it, just raise your hand or type it down in the chat box, and either myself or Scott or Daniel should be watching that, and we'll be able to answer your questions. So what brought this about was we were having a discussion, and Daniel was involved in this and Scott was involved in this, about how we can get Alaska content developed and shared on our video conferencing network. Once we ran out of federal money, which was last October, we didn't have the resource to continue to pay for content with CILC. What we had done to that point is we had put a big content dollar bank. We had started that, so a pool of money with CILC, and then when libraries wanted to use some of their content, a withdrawal happened and that money was taken out. So we continued to fund for about 3.5 years or so CILC programming to our libraries, and that's why the video conferencing really took off, was because we were paying for it at that time. And it was interesting how that happened, and I was really curious, once we stopped funding that, what the what would happen in video conferencing would go away. We were concerned that we became so relied on CILC so much that we weren't getting any other content on there, and that it didn't turn out that way. You know, when we were having this conversation with Scott and Daniel, and I think Julie was involved, you know, the idea is, well, let's do something similar to CILC here in Alaska, where we can put only Alaska content into a location, and then have people come and get Alaska content and do that sort of thing. And my thought was, you know, that's a great idea. I like that. We need Alaska content. We want to be able to share Alaska content with the world. But why do we need to create our own site when CILC is already doing that? Why do we need to reinvent the wheel in order for us to share Alaska content? So that's when Scott says, well, how would you feel about jumping into one of our sessions and talking about CILC and how we've used it and that sort of thing. So that's what we're doing today. So what CILC is, the Center for Interactive Learning and Collaboration, is a warehouse, sort of a clearinghouse of video conferencing content that is hosted by CILC, but the content providers are from all over the world. Our libraries have done things on the Great Barrier Reef several times, probably over 100 times. We have had the Cleveland Museum of Natural History present their Balto program to our libraries. The Alaska Sea Life Center does a lot. The Alaska Zoo is now a content provider with CILC. But anywhere around the world, there's content to be found on CILC in just about any content area that you're interested in. And they do charge to view this content, which is okay. I mean, usually it's anywhere between $100 to $300 for an hour program, maybe an hour and a half program. And you know, if you look at the boxes here, you can see content provider programs and academic classes. We did do some academic classes, but they are much more expensive. The collaborations, we had a classroom of school kids, elementary kids in Seldovia, who set up a collaboration with a classroom of school kids in Texas, and they would meet and they would talk back and forth. They would learn from each other, and it was really cool to see how that happened. Professional development programs are there as well, which we didn't use any of those, and then there's just a video conference directory that can show you all the providers. But our main focus of this was the content provider program. So I believe it's Saturn, or whatever the planet is with the ring around it, in the yellow box there. That's where our focus was. So quickly, if we click on that box, we have to log in first. So in order to use CILC, you have to be a member, and there's no membership fees. You just have to create a profile in there. I've done that, so I'm just going to log in to my profile. Hopefully I typed that correctly. I did not. I got Alaska wrong. Okay. So this is now I have my profile created here. It says welcome back, Shane, up here in the top right hand corner. This is the OWL login, and each library
excuse me, Shane,
had their own profile.
I'm sorry to break in, but
yeah.
We're still seeing the login screen. At least I am. I think you might have to share your desktop. Is anyone else? Is anyone else seeing what Shane's seeing?
Okay, we'll switch from a web tour to application sharing. Okay, does everybody see the front page of CILC again? Okay, so by clicking on the yellow box, the content provider programs, hopefully this catches up. Does that come through now? Daniel, can you see the next screen?
Yes, I can. And as long as I've got the microphone, if it looks really small to people, there's a little checkbox towards the top of your screen that says scale to fit. And if you uncheck that, it'll make the window larger.
Okay, so this screen here is how we search for content provider programs. So just to give you an idea, I'm going to click down the arrow right here, and you can see all of these are all of the content providers that have content in CILC, and all of them have multiple programs in there. But you can see there's Cleveland Museum of Art, Natural History, Country Music Hall of Fame and Museum. We've done several things with the country music. The Museum of Human Disease, the Museum of Flight, lots and lots of museums, the Baseball Hall of Fame. There's so much content in here that you're going to find something in just about any content area you're looking for. So let's see if we just type in Alaska as a keyword and search all content providers. We can see there's a number of, there's 50 programs out there that have some sort of Alaska content in them. This one is by the Alaska Zoo, Gray Wolves, the Alaska Sea Life Center, Seward House Museum. The Balto one, again, has been by far the most popular thing that we've done over the last 3 years. It's an exceptional program. But you can see the Alaska Sea Life Center, the Alaska Zoo. There's lots and lots and lots of Alaska programs out there. If we wanted something on dinosaurs, we just type in dinosaurs into the search box, and it's, there's 18 programs out there on different dinosaur topics. So, basically whatever we want to find, we're more than likely going to find. But I want, since it was our most popular one, let's look at the Balto one, and offered by the Cleveland Museum of Natural History. And we see here that it's got like a star, and it's got like a thumbs up, and then it's got this little kind of ampersand looking thing right here. And what CILC does is they allow, like whether it's a school or a library or a museum or whatever, they get to rate the programs. And CILC lets you know, they're very transparent on what their programs are. And you can see the Balto has won a CILC Pinnacle Award, which is the highest award they give. And it's rated exceptional by educators. So this is going to be a pretty good program that people that use this and people that see it really think highly of it. So if this is the one we want, and we click on the link, and it will take us to a flyer of that program. Does anybody not see this flyer? Maybe it takes a minute to load on your end. Okay, so it tells us everything we want to know about this program. Okay, the content provider, the information, the contact information. It tells you it's an individual program. Target audience is everybody, grades 1 through 12, public library, library patrons. Maximum number of participants. That is the maximum number of people. Now we could have a site here in Anchorage with 10 people, okay, a site in Juneau with 5 people, a site in Fairbanks. What they're asking for is the maximum number of participants, which is the number of people, not the number of sites. Now a lot of CILC programs will only let you do site to site because they charge for it, so it would just be from point A to point B, so it would be from Cleveland to Anchorage, and then we couldn't have more than 35 people. And the reason they don't want more than 35 people is because once you have that, these are all interactive. It's like being face-to-face, and so they want participation on both ends. And if you bring in 100 people, you lose really that interactive personal piece of what an interactive video conference is about. So they limit it to 35. And for this one, there's no minimum. Some of them will say we need at least 5 people in order to do this, but this one doesn't have that. You can see the program format. They talk all about, they sort of give you an agenda or a syllabus kind of what they want to do, and lots of information about this auto program. And all of them have to do this. CILC requires that they put this information in if they want to be a content provider with CILC. So you can see it's it's a request only, which means that you have to request the program, and then they have to confirm a time and date with you. You can't schedule this on your own. So for example, we would request the program to be April 28th from 4 to 5:30 p.m. So we would send in a request to the Cleveland Museum that that's what we wanted, and they would look at that request and they would either confirm with us or suggest another time that we do it when they would be available. And we have run into some issues within our program because a lot of these are East Coast based or and we're sort of unique up here in Alaska as far as where we're at in the time goes. So we could be asking for something at 4 o'clock, which would be 8, 9 o'clock on the East Coast where they've already gone home for the day. So we've had some of that issue, but for the most part, the content providers have really been excellent to work with and really been helpful in staying late or doing whatever was necessary for us to do that. So with this, we see, we've gone through the flyer, we see all of the information here, we like it, and then down at the bottom, this link is also at the top. You can request this program. This is the one we want, so now we want to do the request. So we'll click on that link, and it's going to ask us to fill out the request the connection form. Okay, and I have a PIN to CILC, and once you get a profile made, they'll give you a PIN as well. So we go through this and just fill out the request. It's a video conference, the desired date, let's say April 30th, desired time. Now they do it, so all times right now are Alaska times that we see on this form. They do the conversion automatically in their form. So all the times we would put in here would be Alaska time. So let's go 9, let's go 3 p.m. to 4 p.m. I think it was an hour program. Okay, and then once you have a profile set up, you would be able to pull down you would go in here, and these are all people, and if you look, all these organizations and schools and libraries and museums, and all of these are consumers of content from CILC. And if up here at the top under the A's, there should be an Alaska State Library right there. So we select that, and then this is important when you're scheduling a CILC conference. A person who receives a program or materials, that would be whoever is requesting it, not the state library or not anybody other than the person who is requesting it. So it could be the Anchorage Museum, it could be the Matsu School District, that sort of thing. So they just ask you some other questions. I don't want to submit this because once I submit it, then it's going to schedule that with us. Next step. Next step will probably ask me for a pin. Oh, there are errors. What did I fill out? Okay. So the next step is just the billing information, and it's the Alaska State Library is the billing name, and it gives our address in there. So, so we're not going to schedule this because we don't want to follow through with it. It was just an example. So, going back to the front page with CILC, again, you have all these content providers and all of this content available to us. So the idea in talking with Scott was that maybe we figure out a way where we can develop Alaska content, whether it's in a museum setting, and then as a content provider we can have the Alaska Museum, or we can have any museum around the state where you work could put content in there, and then when somebody, say somebody from Tennessee or something goes in and wants to see this content, the museum actually gets paid a portion of that $150 or $200, whatever we are charging for that program. They'll get a share of that. So it's a great tool. CILC is. We were so good to partner with them because our libraries went absolutely crazy with the content that they provided. It was free to them. Some of them, I think of Amy Marshall at the Craig Library, who was just, she was having programs like 2-3 times a week with CILC stuff. And the library in Seldovia, they got to have a one-on-one between Barbara Bush and their library, a one-on-one or site-to-site conference between Seldovia and Barbara Bush, and just exciting things like that. The Great Barrier Reef, where they take cameras diving underwater with them, and you get to see the reef up close in an aquarium setting. Are all the things that are really cool with CILC, and I really think that if we're going to provide content rather than try to create an Alaska type CILC, we just host it with CILC with them, and they can market it. They do everything else, and we use what's already out there and proven. So, are there any questions from the group about CILC or about what we've done with OWL or about anything like that? Okay, Scott, is there anything else you wanted me to cover or talk about with this? Let's do a poll here just by check marks again. I've cleared all the check marks. With the 4 or 5 of you that are here, as we quickly went through CILC and we're able, and I showed that to you. Do you think that this is something that your museum or your group could take advantage of and maybe host content there or provide content that they could use? If you agree with that, just check the green check mark. If you don't, give me the red one. Well, I'm not seeing any red, so that's good. But okay, well, that's encouraging. So, Scott, is there anything else that that you'd like me to talk about?
Shane, this is Daniel. We had a question. Does a museum have to partner with a library?
No. If your museum wanted to provide content, it would just need to create a profile, and then contact CILC, and they would walk you through the process of how to do that. You don't have to partner with a library. A library would just be a user of that content. So anybody can be a content
And we
provider.
had two questions from Amy Russell. One is, does all content need to be interactive, or can it be something another organization can run on their own?
Good question, and to be honest with you, I don't know. I would assume that since it is a video conferencing interactive network, that CILC would absolutely want it to be that. And in fact, they probably wouldn't accept content that wasn't interactive, a live person interacting with somebody else. I mean, I don't know that for sure. That's just my guess, because that's what everything else is.
Yeah, thank you, Shane. Sorry to butt in like this, but what happens to my machine is that if I don't use my mic for a little while, it mics off, and I was trying desperately to jump in here, and then I had to go and reconfigure my mic on several occasions. But I hope that you can hear me now. Shane, can you hear me? Good. Okay. So thank you, Daniel, for jumping in with that. There were a number of questions, and what I'd like to do is just, if you could just go through. Can you see them all on the chat? I think Daniel was kind of going through those questions. So, and then once we get like all the questions done, then we can just, I'll mic back on. Could you stop sharing your desktop, though, because that little active application is kind of disturbing. Thank you.
There we go. Okay, so the next question I see was who controls access to the OWL equipment? Well, first of all, in order to access or participate with CILC, you don't need access to OWL equipment. You just need that if you're going to be an end user of that. So if there was a program out there that you wanted to see and you wanted to partake of, then you would need to get to a video conferencing endpoint to do that. And to make that happen, you just need to go to probably your local library and schedule that with them. So the library controls access to the OWL equipment in the library, and that's what you would need to do if you were a consumer of the content of CILC. And you would not need to get training on how to do that part, because the library already has that. Where you would need to get some training, and this would be done by CILC, is if you wanted to be a content provider with them. If you wanted to host content from your museum on CILC, so if the Anchorage Museum wanted to be a content provider, there would be some training provided by CILC on how to do that, and how to be interactive and how to present content and that sort of thing. So I hope that answers that question. And the last one I see, can we still get training on how to run the equipment? Yes, absolutely, and that can either be done by but here at the State Library, we could do it. We would probably want to do something like that over the network, so you would get hands-on training on how to use it, with how to, what this button does, what that button does, and that sort of thing. So training is available through the State Library for end users. Again, if you wanted to be a content provider, that would have to be done by CILC, and there would be you wouldn't need to be trained on the video conference equipment in order to be a content provider. You would, to the extent where, you would certainly have to know how to do it. And I don't know if the museums have video conferencing endpoints in them. I don't know that. But yeah, there would definitely be some training necessary on how to present content, because it's interactive. You would need a live person there doing things and switching to the camera and to off the camera to maybe some sort of presentation or a computer or whatever the case may be. And there would definitely be some training that we could provide in those areas. And I'll scroll down. And I'm not seeing any other questions. Okay,
I think Amy has a question right there at the end. If you go all the way to the bottom, she's asking about, if the library that they're going to share a building with has the video conference set up in a sort of a communally used room or a jointly shared room, whether they would have to kind of burden the library staff to do that.
Yeah, that is something I can't answer because I can't speak for the museum. They don't have to do it. I would hope that they would work with you and want to partner with you, because it would be such a good thing for the library. But as far as like I say, it's their library. They make the rules as far as whether it's a meeting room or whether it's a public shared space, or whatever their policies are, would be something that you would have to work with that particular library on if you wanted to set this up with them. So most libraries are really good because it's such a good thing for them. But if they're not, there's really nothing that we could do about it on our end other than just encourage them. But it would be between the museum and the library, or whatever the entities are that want to do that.
Shane, I have a question, and you may have gone over this while I was trying to develop my microphone abilities again, but so is there content that is provided that doesn't involve video conferencing, sort of a video conferencing setup? Is there any way to do that without kind of the higher technology stuff?
Give me an example of what, maybe like just a PowerPoint presentation or something like that.
Yeah, PowerPoint, or let's say more of a lecture with slides, or a video interactive, or like, can you Skype, or can you I don't know. If you're going to do this in your museum, the OWL setup is obviously not in your museum where the artifacts are, and you're not going to take the artifacts to the library. Museums don't do that. So how, like if you wanted to go through collections, or you wanted to talk about how to fold a bear rug properly for for storage or something like that, we need to be in the museum. Is there another way of doing this without being in a video conference setup?
Yeah. So if you could go to your museum and maybe put together a canned presentation, videotape, whatever, of your collections, your artifacts, and then you lose the interactive piece, and it's just a sort of a video. That is not what CILC is about. And to be honest with you, showing video over video conferencing doesn't really work that well with our network because we have to play with the lowest common denominator as far as internet speeds. So our system is set to run as slow as it can, on as slow as bandwidth as it can, and still function properly. And when you try to run video over video conferencing network, it doesn't work. So to answer Scott's question, no, that's not really an option with CILC. It needs to be interactive. It needs to be something where questions can go back and forth.
Excuse me, Shane. I just wanted to jump in here because I've taken something that was from CILC that was more of kind of like a webinar format. It was tips for iPads, and the person was kind of like you with video, had screenshots of his iPad, and it seems like that means that CILC could like take things from people's laptops, for example. So not through the L network, because I totally endorse what Shane's saying about playing video through L, but if you had your own, if you had a webcam connection through CILC, you might be able to do webinar type stuff that they'd be interested in.
Yeah, and that's another thing that we're working towards, Scott. We did buy some infrastructure equipment that allows us to video conference from a desktop, so, or a laptop, or like Daniel said, somewhere with a web camera. So if you wanted to present interactive content from your library using a webcam, like what I'm using today, then there are ways that we can connect that particular computer or iPad or whatever the case may be to the OWL video conferencing network and display the content out from that. It doesn't have to be a library video conferencing endpoint like the formal one. We can also do this from a desktop or a laptop or an iPad or even a mobile phone if we needed to.
Yeah, that's the kind of thing that I was talking about, because I'm thinking of programming that might be very interesting from kind of the behind the scenes of a museum where you have certain artifacts out that you might want to talk about them, and it's just difficult to do if you have to transport all that over to a conference room in a library. It just is not that compatible with what we do. But I could see doing live programming inside the museum if there were some options available. That's just what I'm curious about.
Yeah, and so the option at this point, if you wanted to do that, would be probably off a laptop or a desktop or an iPad or something like that. Ideal situation, and probably the best way to understand this is to, there's also on CILC several free conferences, and there may be a free one on there that you could go see and look at and see how they do it and give you an idea on how to present content, that sort of thing, that you wouldn't have to pay for. So that opportunity is there, but yeah, I mean, ideally you would have a video conferencing endpoint in your museum. If you don't, there's other ways to do that with other mobile devices.
Okay, great. So does anybody have any other questions for Shane before we wrap up this session? I know that people have been kind of hanging in the background, but if you've been thinking about something while we've been chatting, please type it into the chat box and we'll deal with it.
How would they hear about OWL trainings? That would be something that you would need to market. If someone, a CILC customer, was interested in Alaska content, they could do a search for Alaska and your program would come up. You could also market with CILC, market, I mean, if you had a target audience in mind, you could market to them and say this is available through CILC, that sort of thing.
Shane, I think the question is a little bit different than that. I think she wants to know, for her to get training on OWL, is there any training offered by the Alaska State Library?
And that would be something that you would need to call me and we could schedule. We can certainly do that. So yeah, if you wanted to call me and schedule a training, we could absolutely do that. And like I say, depending on where you were at, we could just do it over video conferencing. You could go to your library and we could walk through everything and get some hands-on training. So if you're interested in that sort of training, just give me a call or shoot me an email and we'll set it up.
So Shane, what do you think about that idea of Diane's? I like that, Diane. You know, this idea of, I mean, the Iditarod takes place over a wide geographic area. So what if, you know, during the beginning of it, you know, there was some program where they would go from different stops along the way or something, you know, and then maybe later on they could do some involving the people up in Nome where the, you know, the end point of the Iditarod is. That might be interesting. What do you think? Yeah,
that's great ideas, as long as there's enough broadband at a certain location along the trail, or you know, at a library along the trail. We can absolutely do that. That's the kind of stuff that we're looking to do, and you know, we really want to, you know, to take advantage of this network. You know, we put, and you know, it's not like we're not getting content out there. We're not using the network, because we are. In fact, there's been a few times where we can do 40 endpoints at a time. We have a 40-port bridge, and we've had all of them in use at once, and we're not able to schedule things because the network was saturated. So the network is getting plenty of use. So, but golly, anything that we can do Alaska content-wise goes right to the top of the priority list with us, because that's what we want, and we think that's what, you know, will really bring people into this and start using this. And man, if we get people in Alaska developing content that we can push out, you know, that's a dream for us at OWL.
Okay, well, I think that's been great, and I appreciate your time, Shane, and for giving us this introduction into both OWL and into CILC. I found it very interesting, and I think looks like Amy is typing a little bit more, but we'll look at that and then we'll wrap this up because we're almost done with our hour. Yes, just another comment by Amy about the possibilities of an Iditarod type of program. I think that could be very exciting.
Yeah, I do as well. So yeah, thank you everybody. I hope it was informative to you and you learned something about OWL and CILC. Great tools. OWL is a great program. It's been really great for our public libraries.
All right, and, so great, Shane. Thank you very much.
Hopefully OWL is around for
and with that, we will sign off and say goodbye to everybody, and we'll catch you next time. Thanks. Bye now.
All right, thank you, Scott.